How I got revenge on a group of rude girls who lied about knowing me and wanted a free table at my restaurant. What happened there? Before start story, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Story Podcast Book, and hit the bell button for notification. My grandparents came from Italy to Canada in the 70s and started a restaurant business. They passed it on to my parents when they died, and my parents made it bigger and better over the years. I grew up working in the restaurant since I was 15. My parents retired a few years ago and moved to Florida for the winters, but they still own a small share of the business. They left me in charge of the restaurant. I decided to give the restaurant a makeover when I took over. I changed the look, the logo, the marketing, and invited more media attention. It was a risky move and I had to borrow a lot of money to do it. I was afraid that I had destroyed the legacy of my family. But then, things started to pick up. A local YouTube star featured us in his video, and that brought more customers and reviews. We became so popular that we had to take reservations months in advance. We also hosted celebrities and special events, and I hired famous chefs to cook for them. That was very expensive. During the holidays, we were super busy. We had no empty tables at all. I always helped out with the work, whether it was greeting customers, clearing tables, or mopping floors. Sometimes I wore a suit and acted like a boss, but other times I was just one of the staff. One night, a group of 6 girls walked in. They looked very young, except for one who seemed a bit older. Maybe she was their sister or mentor or something. She was the leader of the group and she was telling the others how great this place was, how delicious the food was, and how they might see some celebrities. She came up to me and said she needed a table for 6. I asked her for her reservation name. She said she didn't have one, but it was okay because she was a personal friend of the owner. She said he always kept some tables open for special guests, and he said she could have one tonight. Now, I usually do have some tables reserved for VIPs, but I had no idea who this girl was, and she never talked to me about this. I didn't want to embarrass her in front of her friends, so I didn't tell her that I was the owner and that she was lying. Not at first, anyway. I told her that I was sorry, but we couldn't seat anyone without a reservation, because we were fully booked. She then told one of the other girls to take a picture of me and said she would talk to the owner and make sure I was either scrubbing toilets or fired by the end of the week. The other girls joined in and said things like, "Yeah, say goodbye to your minimum wage job." I don't know if they were in on it with her or if they really thought she knew the owner. She then said to me, "Look, you can either give us a table or I can make your life very hard. You don't want to lose your job over this." She kept pointing at me and trying to make me feel small. She said things like, "You don't matter here, because if you did, you would know who I am and you would never say anything to me except yes or of course." She tried to bully me and get that table. I had had a long day and I was fed up with her. I had 3 choices. 1. Tell her I was the owner and call her out on her lies. 2. Give her the table and let it go. 3. Teach her and her little followers a lesson. I chose option 3 for various reasons. Some of them were personal flaws, but I also wanted to teach her a lesson. I smiled at her and said, "Of course, ma'am. Follow me, please." I gave her one of the 3 tables we keep open in case a celebrity shows up, which happens sometimes. I apologized to her and said she was right. It was easier to just give her the table. I also said that the first 3 rounds of drinks were on the house. I seated them and took their orders personally. I asked them for one of their credit cards and IDs to keep on file and said we would return them before they left. Queen Karen gave me her cards and told the other girls that she was paying for everything. I got them their free drinks and told them that the food might take a while because we were so busy. They didn't care, they just wanted to drink. They ordered 3 rounds and still no food. They eventually called me and asked me to check on it. They were very rude and nasty to me. I said I would check on it and asked them if they wanted more drinks. They ordered 2 more rounds before the appetizers came. They were all drunk by then. They had been drinking on an empty stomach and only had salads. They ordered more food and more drinks. They didn't realize that they were at our VIP table, which costs a lot of money just to sit at, but I didn't charge them for that. What I did charge them for was all the expensive cocktails they had all night, except for the first 3 rounds. And the menu they had was different from the regular one. It didn't have prices on it, that's a trade secret. And it had some very high-end dishes like white truffle, black caviar, and imported oysters. There were times when I felt sorry for these girls and wondered if I was being too harsh. But then they would say something that made me change my mind. Like when one of them asked me if I was happy with my pathetic life as a waiter. Or when another one of my staff told me how they were planning to bad behavior with me so that they could get a table anytime they wanted. Or when I heard them say that I was cute but they would never date a loser like me who was such a pushover. They kept insulting me and mocking me all night. So I continued with their lesson. By the end of the night, each girl had a bill of around $500 to $600. I gave Queen Karen the bill of $4,232.23, including tax and tip. She sobered up instantly. She stopped laughing and almost started crying. She called me over and asked me if this was a joke. I looked at the bill and said, "Oh yes, I'm sorry, I'll get you the right bill in a moment." She felt relieved and thought she got the wrong bill. She called me a moron and went back to chatting with her friends. But I did make a mistake. I forgot to add her 8th order of a dozen oysters that cost $120 each. So I happily corrected the bill. When I came back with the new bill, she freaked out again. She went nuts. I asked her if there was anything on the bill that she didn't order. She and the girls looked at every line of the bill, including the first few lines that said complimentary for their first 3 rounds. They took out their phones and added up everything again and again. Queen Karen was very shaken and said she needed to go to the bathroom. I thought she might try to run away and leave the others with the bill, but I subtly reminded her that we had her ID and credit card. I didn't make it obvious that I thought she was going to bail. 10 minutes later, she came back with fresh makeup. She had been crying and made up a whole story about how the food was terrible, the drinks were awful, and so on. She demanded that I cut the bill in half at least and that the other girls would chip in, even though she had told them it was her treat. Then she remembered her fake friendship with the owner and mentioned it again, as if that would make me more willing to cut the bill in half. I was barely able to suppress a smile as I told her no. No, I could not change the bill. She took out her phone and showed me a series of texts from someone named my restaurant's name owner, which I quickly realized was the fake script that she had created in the bathroom by changing one of her Karen friends' contact names and deleting previous texts. I looked at them and then clicked on contact info and told her that was not the owner's cell number. She said, "He has multiple phones for business and stuff. Of course, you don't know all his numbers." I thought, wow, this girl had thought of everything, except that I was the actual owner. I said, "How about this? If we call him and he confirms that he agreed to give you 50% off the bill, then I'll do it." She started to yell and scream, drawing the attention of the few remaining customers. I decided it was time to end this. I told her in a less friendly voice, "Stop lying, little girl. You don't know the owner. You have never been here before, and if you keep yelling, I will call the police." She changed her tone and tried to defend herself as best as she could. I said, "My grandparents founded this restaurant. My family has been running this place for generations. I have worked here almost my entire life. I am the one and only owner of this restaurant, and I have never seen you, heard of you, or made any promises to you or any stranger I don't know and have never met before tonight." The mini Karens were speechless and didn't know how to react. Queen Bee Karen was in tears. I said, "Now I gave you the table you wanted, one of your specially reserved tables for high-end clients, which I didn't charge you for, and I gave you 3 rounds of free drinks if you don't pay your bill. I will call the cops and show them your ID." Queen Karen signed the bill in tears, and the mini Karens took out their purses to give her whatever cash they had, which amounted to maybe a couple of hundred, promising to pay her back more. 2 days later, a man came into my restaurant, furious, and asked one of my bartenders to speak to me. I was in the back office for a bit working, so he waited a good half hour for me. He was Queen Bee Karen's father. She was with him too, keeping her head down. I took them both to my office and showed him highlights of the security cameras, which had very good audio quality because they were in the VIP section, which we had to keep good records of because we had other unrelated incidents before. I showed him most of it, their comments, their orders, their everything. When it was over, he stormed out with her, yelling at her the whole time they were walking away. I haven't seen or heard from either of them since, but the original bill I gave them, the one that didn't count the $120 oysters, is framed on my desk. Side note, I didn't lose as much overhead on the table and 3 rounds as you might think. The table was originally supposed to be empty, so I didn't lose anything since I didn't expect to gain anything to begin with, and the overhead for the food and other drinks more than covered the loss on the 3 free first rounds. I thought about posting this on Nuclear Revenge, but I read some of the stories there and I think making this girl pay a few thousand and giving her a life lesson doesn't qualify. Some of the revenge there are life-ruining stories and losses in the tens or hundreds of thousands. Like, comment, and subscribe our YouTube channel, Story Podcast Book. Don't forget, hit the bell button for notification.